In this video, we're going to put down some epoxy primer on the interior of this 1971 Camaro. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so if you haven't been following along, I already have the car stripped on the interior. We did some repair work up in the speaker area. These were all mangled, so we cut out some replacement pieces from a donor panel and welded them in. And like I said, we got everything stripped in here. So this just needs cleaned up. I sprayed this down with OSPO, so I need to neutralize that. So I'm going to spray it again and wipe it down with a damp cloth. To strip this, I started off using sanding discs and then following up with conditioning pads. However, I found these blue nylon discs to work much better and faster. So check out one of my previous videos on this if you're interested in learning more. I'll link to it. So we're almost ready to prime this, and I need to get primer on it this weekend. It's finally starting to warm up, so it's about 65 here. And you know, the rust and humidity and all that's going to start showing up if I don't get it primed. So we're going to get this cleaned up today, and then tomorrow we're going to prime it. But first we're going to cut out this homemade transmission tunnel. Don't like it, and I'm going to make something that looks original. Well, I'm at least going to try, but we're not going to do that today. It's going to be on a future episode. Today is just focused on getting the car ready for epoxy primer, and then tomorrow we're going to get epoxy primer over this whole thing. So let's go ahead and get this cut out. This way we're not making too much of a mess after the fact, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we got the top cut off. In the process, my die grinder decided to die, so I'm gonna have to order one of those. But you can kind of see this needed cut off anyway, because like it's hitting right here, and this piece up here, it was already cut back here. I gotta order it, so I cut it again up here by accident. But this is kind of hitting here, which might be okay. I think it just needs bolted in place. But anyway, so I'm gonna, in a future video, try my luck. I'll probably have to cut this down a little further and then try my luck making something that looks original but gives me a little more room. I did order a bead roller to replicate this, so we'll see how that goes too. I've never used a bead roller before, but we will figure it out. So we're gonna let this go and focus on getting the rest of this car primed before it starts getting humid outside and everything else. So let's go ahead and do that. All right guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and vacuum this out one more time, and then I'm gonna spray a light coat of OSPO on it, because I did spray all the pits with OSPO and basically it dried on there. So spraying another coat on top of it and then getting it before it dries will let me wipe all that up. And then we'll wipe it down with wax and grease remover a few times tonight. And then in the morning, we'll go ahead and prime. And then we'll deal with that some other time. So let's go ahead and vacuum it out once more. I guess I hit that with OSPO again, let it sit for a little bit, and then I'm going to wipe it up before it dries. And that'll help neutralize most of this. I don't have a problem with Eastwood's epoxy primer on this stuff. I've sprayed it over top before and I haven't had any issues, so I'm not worried about it, but I like to play it safe. So go ahead, let that sit, and then we'll come back with a damp cloth and clean it up. All right guys, so it's been sitting for about 2 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and get a bucket of water and wipe her down. All right guys, I got 2 buckets of water. I got one that I'm gonna use to keep it clean, and then when I rinse out stuff, I'm gonna put it in this bucket. So I'm gonna start on this side here, wipe it down, and then jump over to the other side. And then once we're done wiping everything down, we're gonna hit it with 80 grit sandpaper. For you guys using SPI epoxy primer, you probably don't wanna use OSPO. If you do, check out the forums. They tell you how to neutralize it. It's basically this: you spray it on, let it sit for a minute or two, and then you wipe it down like you're washing a car. And then after that, you go ahead and hit it with 80 grit. And then wipe it down, of course, with a good wax and grease remover. So anyway, like I said, the Eastwood epoxy primer doesn't seem to be affected too much by this stuff, but I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up anyway. Alright, so we got it wiped down, dried off, and now you can see why you want to hit it with 80 grit, just to get that clean metal back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll wipe it down with wax and grease remover. Alright guys, so we got the metal all scuffed up. I just hit everything with the blue strip disc, and then I kind of went over it with 80 grit sandpaper. I don't have any 80 grit discs, so that'll have to do. And now I'm going to continue to wipe it down with wax and grease remover. I already went over everything once. It was pretty dirty, so we're going to go ahead and do that again. And then we'll be ready to shoot some epoxy. Good. All right guys, we gotta let this dry for 30 to 60 minutes, and then we'll hit it with a second coat. All right guys, got epoxy primer down on the interior of the car. It's all looking good. That feels really good to have that done. Can't tell you how many times I've sanded some of this and then it's rusted again and had to do it again and again. So at this point, that's all pretty good. Now the one thing that keeps happening to me every time I paint is that I get these little bumps. And at first I thought they were dust, but they're just way too consistent. So I was doing a little bit of research, and I think my product's too old at this point. Either that or it's not mixed up well. So I'm gonna go ahead and retire this stuff because I don't exactly know. I don't know if that D is for date there, but that would have been 2016. So this stuff, and it's been open since then, and what happens is this catalyst or activator, whatever it is, generally is only good for about 2 or 3 years after you open it. And I'm assuming that's the date. The copyright on the cans are 2015. This stuff's from 2012. There's a date on the bottom of it. So I think it's time to get some fresh epoxy primer, and then we can at least rule that out. So the other thing I read is that, you know, those spots I see could be I don't know what you call them, suspended, whatever, but basically what happens is when this sits and isn't moved for a long time, it sounds like I'm not going to be able to mix it with a stick or with the stir stick that I used on my drill. It really needs to be put into a paint mixing machine and mixed up really good. So either way, I think it's one of those things. I think either it's A, too old, B, it's not mixed up enough, or C, both. But at this point, I've tried different cleaning methods, everything else, and it keeps happening. But again, this stuff's pretty old. So I'm gonna order a quart of some fresh stuff and see how it goes. And then at least I'll know. So we'll get back to that. I never had this problem. So basically I bought this and I did some work on the car, and then I took a break from the car for about a year or two, and then came back to it, and now I'm seeing that. So again, this isn't normal, like what I'm seeing here in this car, but I do notice, like you can see, and I'm sure some of it's dust, don't get me wrong, I'm in a garage, but this is just way too consistent. So I don't know, if you guys got ideas too, let me know. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but definitely gonna try some fresh stuff, because I had the same issue on my door skins too. So, but anyway, once it dries, it sands out, it's not a big deal. All right, so just so that I can get rid of this, I'm going to dump this into here, and check out how dark this is. So it's pretty yellow. Look at that. Oh wow. Yeah. I think that stuff was pretty bad. If I remember right, it's clear. Yeah, look. Check it out, it should be clear. Mine's dark yellow. So, time to get some fresh stuff. Note to self, don't buy so much if I'm not going to use it, so it's unfortunate. Alright guys, that's it for this one. It feels good to have that thing in epoxy primer. It's been a lot of work on the interior. I know the videos haven't been too exciting, so I'm glad to be able to finally move on to something else. You know, it's hard to film inside the car and everything, but we're done with that. So last thing we got to do in there is make that transmission tunnel, but we can do a lot of that work kind of outside of the car and get some better footage for you guys. So if you got any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down below and I'll get back to you. If you like this content, please consider subscribing, and if you do subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get alerts whenever we post new content. We'll see you in the next one.